So now that we have animated everything in our scene, let's now work on accelerating and decelerating our scooter. So as agreed, we are going to be able to accelerate using the right arrow button, and we are going to keep accelerating as long as we are holding the right arrow button. If we release the right arrow button, we're going to gradually decelerate, and if we click and hold the back arrow button or the left arrow button, we are going to decelerate more aggressively so that we can brake. So let's do that. I'm going to, as always, create this in a new file. I'm going to call this one speed.mjs, and of course I'm going to import it in my index. And in here, let's first create a couple of functions. One to handle when we press on a key, let's call it handle key down. And another one when we release a key, let's call it handle key up. And let's attach these to the key down and key up event listeners on the window. So window, add event listener, key down, handle key down, and key up, and key up. And now in here, in handle key down, we need to check if we have pressed on the right arrow key or the left arrow key. And this is going to be contained in event.key. The key name for the right arrow is going to be called arrow right, like so. Capital A and capital R. And the left arrow is going to be called arrow left. And on key up, we only need to check if we have released the right arrow key. If we were accelerating and we released the right arrow key, we're going to need to decelerate, so we need to check if we have released the right arrow key. So we're going to check for that here, arrow right. And now let's create a function to accelerate. I'm going to call it accelerate, and let's call this function when we click on the arrow right button. So let's first maybe console log something here, maybe accelerate. And when we click on the right arrow button or on any button, this event listener is going to keep running until we release that button. So if we go here now and click on the right arrow button, as you can see, it is going to keep logging accelerate until I release the button. So it looks like we have forgot to add the event here in our handle key up function. But anyways, what we're going to do now in this accelerate function, as long as we are clicking on that right arrow button, we're going to increase the playback rate of our animation, of all of our animations, of course. So let's do that. As long as we are calling this accelerate function, let's increment the playback rate of our animations just by a little bit. So in here, I'm going to call document to get animations, to get all of our animations, loop through them. And for each animation, I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to console log the animation itself to show you something. And then I'm going to call animation, or set the animation, the playback rate of animation by using animation.playback_rate. We can also set it using update playback rate. However, I need to increment it, so I'm going to set it like so, and then increment it with plus equals. I'm going to increment it by 0.1. By having that, if we save and play and hold our right arrow, as you can see, our speed is changing. However, if you notice, of course, we have another problem that we are going to talk about. However, if you notice, the vibration animation for our scooter body is also increasing. However, we don't need that to happen. The vibration animation is not part of our speed. We need it to be independent from accelerating and decelerating. So what we can do, when we loop through our animations, get animations is going to return the animations that we have created with the JavaScript API, and it is also going to return the CSS animations. So remember, the vibration one is created using CSS somewhere here, this one. This is also going to be returned when we loop through our animations. So as you can see, we have a CSS animation here, and it has an animation name of vibration. And we are increasing the playback rate of this animation when we accelerate. However, we do not need to do that. We need that to be independent. So we can simply, in here, when we loop, check if animation.animation name is not equals to vibration. We are going to increase the playback rate. Otherwise, we're not going to do anything. So this is vibration. And now by having that, if we increase our speed, notice that the vibration animation is not changing, right? Great, but now we have a couple of problems here. As you can see, now the background and the foreground animations are out of sync. Why? Because we are increasing the playback rate of the animation, of the current animations. However, remember, in our background and also in our foreground, when the animation is done, we repeat the animation by calling animate foreground again and animate background again. However, when we do so, we are going to create a new animation with the default playback rate, which is 1. So it's not going to take the current playback rate that we are having for all of our other animations. So these new animations that are going to be added are going to be slower than the street animation and the scooter animation if we are accelerating. So to fix that, when we create a new animation, by calling foreground.animate, we need to set its playback rate. So foreground animation.playback rate. We need to make it in sync with the playback rate of the street animation. So as we know, the street animation is infinite. It is not going to be removed and added again, similar to what we're doing here. So we can depend on that to know the current playback rate. So street animation of playback rate. And we can do that also in our background when we create a new houses animation. We can call houses animation playback rate and set this to the street animation playback rate. By having that, now if we increase our speed, the houses should be in sync, and also the foreground as well. Right. One more thing I would like to do is when we first load our page and press on space, I would like for our scooter not to be moving initially, so that we can accelerate from 0, right? So remember in index.js we had an init function that we called initially. And in here we call animation.pause. Let's also set the playback rate to 0 initially. However, if we do so and refresh and click on space, we're not moving and then we can accelerate. However, we also need to exclude the vibration animation from that. So if you are stationary, the vibration animation should still be running since our engine is running. However, we are just not moving, right? So in here, we can do something similar to what we've done here, where we check first if our animation name is not vibration, set the playback rate to 0. So now, if we click on space, as you can see, our vibration is happening. However, we are not moving, but we can move now using the right arrow. Right? A couple of more things that we need to do when accelerating. Of course, when we accelerate, let's go to the speed file. When we accelerate, we don't need to accelerate indefinitely. We need to have a limit. We need to have a limit to our speed. So I'm going to add a condition here in the accelerate function. First of all, I'm going to create a constant. I'm going to call it maximum playback rate, and this is going to be the maximum playback rate that we can reach. And I'm going to set it to 24. Of course, if you need to go faster, you can set it to a higher number. And now in my accelerate function, before doing anything, we need to do a check first, if, and we need to check if our current playback rate is equals to or larger than 24, we need to stop. So how can we know the current playback rate? We can always check the one for the street. Of course, we can check other ones as well. We can check the scooter maybe, or the houses. However, let's say the street is going to be our reference, and we can check here if the playback rate of our street exceeded or is equals to the maximum playback rate. We are just going to return, and also we need to avoid, return. We need to avoid accelerating. We don't need to do anything if our animation is paused. So let's add an OR here and check if street animation is paused. So if street animation.playState is not equals to running, this means that our animations are paused and we don't need to do anything. So now, if we try to accelerate while pausing, nothing should happen. And when we accelerate, we should have a limit. However, before checking that limit, let's also update this speedometer text with our speed. So I'm going to go here. Remember this speedometer text. It has, it's inside of a div with an ID of speedometer and then a span speed. So let's get that element, store it in a constant. I'm going to call it speed text, document query selector, and then let's get inside of speedometer ID speed. And every time we update our playback rate, we need to update the text in our speedometer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a function. I'm going to call it handle speed, and I'm going to call this function every time we update our playback rate. So in here, and also when we decelerate, we are going to update the playback rate. So we're going to need to call this function, and this function is going to be responsible for updating the speed text. I'm going to create a constant called speed, and remember our playback rate is a number between 0 and 24. So let's say our speed, we need it to be between 0 kilometers per hour and 192 kilometers per hour. So we're going to multiply the maximum playback rate times 8, since of course 24 times 8 is 192. This is of course an assumption. You can change it if you would like. So I'm going to call to use method.round here to round our number and get the playback rate of our street. This is going to be the current playback rate, and multiply it times 8. And then let's get this number and add it as the text for our speed text span. So speed text content speed. Now, if we click on space and start moving, we should reach 192 kilometers per hour as a maximum speed. So of course I'm holding the right arrow button now, and we are accelerating, and we should not exceed 192. Right. So I think that should do it for acceleration for now. What we need to do next is when we release the right arrow button, the accelerate button, we need to gradually decelerate. And also when we click on the left arrow button, we need to brake by decelerating more aggressively. So let's work on deceleration in the next video.